be happy when she's unhappy because her unhappiness has to reign over my happiness.
You spend 4 years telling yourself, oh yeah, this is fine. All the fucking room is on fire all around you.
Did you see the fire?
So I'm going to tell you everything about the day I escaped. And just a small disclaimer, I usually do this disclaimer before I start any video. I do smile sometimes when I'm talking about this. It's not because I think it's funny or because it makes me happy, but it's a defense mechanism, which is quite usual with trauma survivors, to have some kind of gallows humor, which this is the meaning of gallows humor. And yeah, so it's just a way to cope, because most of us have talked about this situation so many times that we need to kind of desensitize ourselves and distance ourselves from the situation as to not be deeply affected by reliving it as we're telling the story. I have said this many times, and the truth is that if you had told me 2 weeks before I escaped that I would escape, I would tell you that you're crazy. I would tell you that it is not possible. I would tell you that I would never do that to my parents. I would never betray them, because that's how I felt. I felt like choosing myself was betraying them. And this is what happens with many people in these kinds of family dynamics, raised in these family dynamics. We get so used to regulating our emotions based on the other person's emotions that we don't have a real sense of our true identity, or we don't have that sense anymore. And that was my case. Somewhere along my development as a person, I knew exactly who I was and who I wanted to be. And then something very powerful and scary happened to me, and I changed completely. Before, I could see that me and my mother didn't have a connection and would never have that connection. And then suddenly I became her #1 fan. And this happened for many reasons, but mostly something happened. There was one thing that happened that made me dread her and my stepfather forever. And it was one time that I was already on depression medication, and I was very heavily medicated, wrongfully heavily medicated. At the time, I lived in the United States, and I wasn't doing very well emotionally, obviously, but I was heavily medicated. And I had a cousin visit me from France, and we had thought about pulling a prank on my stepfather. Two 15-year-olds wanting to prank a stepfather that wasn't even a good person to begin with. Now, it wasn't a big deal. It really wasn't. It wasn't something dangerous dangerous. It wasn't something awful. But I always felt guilty for existing. And I felt that my behaviors had to be reported back to my mother and my stepfather all the time. They had already made sure that I wasn't sharing too much of what was going on at home by not really allowing me to speak to my family back in their home country. I wasn't allowed to be with friends from school, to go out, to go to the park, any of that I wasn't allowed to do. It was usual for me to be surveilled. And so when we were going to pull the prank, I felt really guilty because I felt like I was doing something really wrong. And they basically found out that I was going to pull a prank and that I had given up on pulling the prank. And that day I woke up with my mother screaming, saying that I'm evil, absolute worst piece of in the planet, that she regrets having me. She said all these awful things. And then she closed me and my cousin in my bedroom. She said we were gonna pay for it. Then my stepfather came back from work. We were looking through the window of my bedroom down to the porch where they were talking very loudly so we could hear them, threatening us and saying that we were awful people, that we were disgusting. They let us out from the room, made us go into the porch. They had something for us to drink. It had a foul smell and an awful taste. And at the first sip, I started throwing up, and they forced us to drink. They grabbed the 2 cups, they put it on the table in the porch, and they said, "You're gonna drink that, and that's how we're gonna get our revenge for even thinking about pulling a prank on us." I started drinking and puking and crying and puking and saying I couldn't do it. And then I will never forget the look of my mother. She was smiling. She was enjoying it. My stepfather was looking at her like she was this goddess that was avenging him. I started puking and my mother turned to me and she said, "You better drink all of that or I'll make you eat your puke too." It was a drink with dishwasher soap and bleach and cereal. I don't know why they had this idea, but they made us drink it. And after drinking a bit of it, a big glass, like one of those tall glasses, I looked at the exit of the porch and I thought to myself, I'm just gonna run. So I just started running. My cousin ran after me and she said, "We can't keep running. We don't have our passports. We're in the middle of this town in America." She was like, "I can't go back home and I can't do anything either. It wasn't happening to me, you know, I didn't know, I was 15. So we had to run back. And that's when they were very, very pleased. They told us that we shouldn't forget that for the weekend we had a trip planned to Canada and that we better be in our best behavior. So the next day in the morning, we were going to do a road trip to Canada and spend the weekend there. And of course, we were absolutely traumatized and feeling very ill. And when I was about to take my medication, as usual, my mother grabbed my medication. She said, "You're evil. You don't need medication. There's no solution for you." She grabbed the medication and confiscated it and never gave it to me again. And then we had to go on a road trip. And during the entire road trip, she would look back to the seat, look back, and be like, "Smile." At the time, having a phone with internet wasn't a thing. Also, she had confiscated my cousin's phone, not mine. But I didn't have internet or anything. I was scared. I was so scared. Since that episode, I feared them so much. And something happened to my brain that just made me feel this kind of sick love for my mother. And I felt like I couldn't ever leave them because we were bonded, attached forever. And through the years, anytime something would go wrong in my personal life or with friends or with, love interests or a boyfriend, she would come to me and say, see, you can only count on us. Everybody leaves. And this slow programming, along with all the other things, it made me think that it was impossible to live a life without my mother and my stepfather. Anything that I would ever do or accomplish or earn would be for them. Needless to say that this led to awful things. Needless to say that.
Ooh, we're gonna play my favorite game. Who's the worst mother in the world?
The fact that I was so faithful to them led to that moment in my life where things started building up and I realized that I had been lied to about so many things all throughout my upbringing, and that the initial perspective that I had of my mother when I started forming my own identity as a teenager was actually the right perspective. I should have never had drifted from what Jennifer at 15 years old thought about her mother. And deep down I knew that we were never a normal mother and daughter relationship. I hoped that my mother could love me one day. And then I realized that whatever feeling that she had towards me, it could never be called love because it was absolutely conditional and ever changing. In the span of one day, one word, sentence, thing, there was no more talking. We're going to sit and talk about this. There was nothing to talk about. So when I decided that I was going to leave and that was it, I thought, first, I'm gonna get my cat safe, gonna get myself safe, and I'm going to try to record and document as much as possible of this weekend and process so it can be helpful to other people. And that was one big motivation, because if you know that your actions might inspire or help other people, it's more motivating to actually hold yourself accountable to actually getting what you have to do done. And so I decided on a Friday. First thing was, when am I going to leave? So it couldn't be the weekend because on the weekend they were home. So it would have to be on a Monday. So I tried to think about the time, approximate time when they would both leave for work, and give it about half an hour to an hour from that point, the point that they would leave the house, until then, just to make sure that it would be enough time for them to not be able to drive back if suddenly they had this suspicion that I was actually trying to leave. I tried to rent a van, so I started looking at information on van rentals, prices, try to see what kind of van size I would need. We were lucky enough to actually find a van that would come with a driver, so I could just put my cats in my car, myself in my car, my partner in my car, and then leave. And meanwhile, the van would also be going to the same place that I was going to. So during the weekend, when they left for a while in the afternoon, so I went downstairs, took photos of the belongings and things that I would absolutely want to take with me, went to the garage, did the same thing, and then went back upstairs. And this was just helpful to kind of decide which would be the area of the house that I would kind of sweep first. also be more objective, because obviously I knew that I was going to be very anxious that morning, that we had a very limited amount of time to do all this. So 72 hours before, I was just really pumped, really determined. I was so focused on thinking how I wanted to feel safe again, coming to the realization that I can't live this way and there is another way to live.
I really could imagine any outcome for my life. I never thought it would be disassembling the place I built.
It was unfathomable for me, because when you spend so long conformed, you can't imagine another life for yourself, you know? I remember that I kept shifting sort of in and out of consciousness in my own awareness of what had happened to me and how I had silently conformed to it, although I felt deep down that it wasn't, that there's something wrong. So I was watching a lot of videos about family dynamics and about leaving a cult to put inside my head that this is not normal. You have been manipulated. You have to accept it, and there's a way out. And that was the main thing for me, was realizing there is a way out. And what you've been accepting all your life isn't something you should be accepting. Especially when it gets to a point where you're fearing your own safety and your pet's safety. My mother and my stepfather would just barge into my room, use my window. They would use that as an entrance, an exit point to the garage of my house, instead of just using the doorway. I had asked them many times not to do that, and they just kept doing it. And that's just one of the things. They tried to hurt my cats. Hal told me several times that they did not like them, that they only tolerated them. They also threatened that if I gave them a renting contract to stay in my house when I left, then they would vandalize the place. I was very uncomfortable with all the shouting. I was very uncomfortable with not being able to work. I was very uncomfortable with not being able to be in my own bedroom. I was very uncomfortable with thinking that at any moment they could end my cats' lives. I asked for space, and yet, even in the attic, the phone calls were constant, text messages were constant, to the point where they would just come knocking in my door in the attic, asking to be let in. And in such a critical time in my case, in my life, where I was really trying to finally finish a project that I had been working on for so long, and that was my entire life. My Ph.D. was my entire life for 4 years. I really needed to focus to get it done. I had a deadline to meet, and if I didn't finish and meet that deadline, I would have to pay back every cent of the grant that I had won back in 2019. So it was not an option to give up. And my mother knew what was at stake, and still, she chose herself. She chose to be the main character of my life and not allowing me to live and breathe.
So I want to show you a real life example of what manipulation is in its real form. My favorite dessert is a dessert that is quite easy to bake. There's been a lot of times that one could bake it to celebrate a moment in my life, but no. I had a fight with my parents yesterday, a serious one, that brought me to decide in secret to move out. But out of nowhere, they have decided to bake this say, but it's apple pie. Important note is that they had sent photos already, and I said I'll have it tomorrow because I'm resting. This was 2 hours ago. I'm here with my boyfriend, by the way, and in a big studio room, closed, locked. Okay. She came upstairs, knocked for 3 minutes until someone opened. We literally didn't make a sound. My boyfriend opened. She offered the pie. Am I gonna eat it? No, it's probably poisoned. Not stupid. Her first thing in the morning thing she said was, we need to go to a lawyer to make sure that the house stays ours if you die.
In the last 48 hours, I just wanted to leave right then and there. I really did. I didn't want to wait anymore. I was getting more and more nervous, more and more excited, more and more scared of something going wrong. I have accepted that I need to get out of the situation. So now I want to get out right now. I felt like this impulse to just go now. But the thing is, I need to be smart about this, because that's the thing. You need to be smart about planning your escape, because if you're not, things can go really wrong. And I knew that if my mother caught me leaving, or my stepfather, then that might have just been the end of my life, or the end of my cat's life, because I knew what she was capable of. And I had seen how much true hatred she had for me and how much pleasure she had to see me suffer.
Okay, let's shoot this documentary. How you feeling, man?
I'll be honest, like, this is really hard because, like, I love apple pie, and this one is, like, super juicy, and, like, it smells delicious. I really love apple pie. I really, really do. It would be best if it had cinnamon, but it's pretty good looking. And this is hard. If I were alone, I would probably have a slice and think, it's nothing. The problem is that it's a slice, but conceptually speaking, me eating it is giving her power. It's not just eating the pie. And subconsciously speaking, I am giving her power, and I am reinforcing the dependency I have on her, so I can't eat it. And that's how slowly I break the manipulative chain, and I try to take them out of my own hands, and I decide to move on. It's gonna happen in secret. It's not gonna change.
And then at 24 hours before, it was insane. I just kept thinking, tomorrow, it's the start of my next life. I'm going to start being me. I'm going to be allowed to be me. I'm going to be allowed to exist how I want to exist, without being questioned, without being judged.
Like, do that when I'm leaving. Like, look, this movie. You as well. Even when I moved from the other house to here, I was like literally really sad. Like, I think this is the first move I do that I'm like, yeah.
We're not talking about her.
You don't understand. Wait, how many hours? Let me do the countdown. 11 hours. 11 hours. And, like, they're gonna go fast. And, like, I'm not kidding. We're gonna go. Like, bags, books, clothes, like, everything. Like, fridge. We're gonna turn off the fridge, actually. Like, don't forget that. Cat's thing. Cat's in the bag.
The morning came, finally, and went downstairs first, checked if somebody was in the house, and then the van came with the driver, and I just started packing things, putting things in plastic bags, putting them aside so they could be put in the van, going to the garage, doing the same thing. And in about 3 hours, we managed to grab everything that was needed and put it in a van and then drive away. Now, very important things to consider when escaping is the first thing that goes out of the door with you is your ID, your passport. That's the number one thing. In this case, the first thing obviously would be me having my ID with me at all times, and also making sure that my cats were ready to go.
Anyway, so we've got 20 minutes. These are the things I'm gonna take. Need all of this. Basically, not the couch. Here, leaving this, taking this, taking this. The plants, obviously.
Because in my head, I never thought I would do this. That I would have the strength to do this. That I would even consider it because I was so in deep with the lies and the brainwashing. Not that I'm not in the brainwashing, because I still have part of me like you're betrayed, but it's just not worth it. To give that voice, you know.
So now we're done.
And then, after driving to where I was going to be sheltered, we came inside and then finally took a shower and kind of felt like I could breathe. Maybe for the first time in my life. Part of me was so scared, still feeling that fear and that adrenaline of what happened in those 3 hours and in the previous weekend before that, and all the time that I was in living in such a confined space. But I just felt so grateful and happy to look at my pets and see them safe and napping and just so relaxed, and it made all the mess and the insanity worth it. But obviously I would be lying if I said that it was just uphill from here. So let's keep it real. Let's keep this real and realistic. Let's keep it real. Sure, I could breathe again, and as long as I was between these four walls, I was safe, and so were my pets. But obviously inside, there was this turmoil of emotions and this kind of battle of me against myself, of knowing I absolutely did the right thing, but somehow feeling like I didn't do the right thing, and then over time realizing that feeling of thinking that I didn't do the right thing maybe was just my programming by my parents that made me think that me choosing myself was wrong. And that is something that I really want to bring everybody's attention to, is that even after you escape, it is normal to have feelings of guilt. It is normal to have feelings of, did I do the right thing? Did I go about it the right way? But that is really part of the process, and you're gonna have times when you're gonna feel like you're walking backwards. But it is reminding yourself that after you escape, you are going to have an entire journey of reprogramming your brain into a healthier version of yourself and deprogramming your brain simultaneously from all the things you were told, all the beliefs that were installed in you that aren't really you, your identity. Because I kept thinking, how is she gonna feel about me leaving? Is she gonna be sad about it? But then she wasn't. I talked to a family member the days after, the day when she found out I left, and the days after, and for her it was business as usual until she found out that she would have to leave the house. It was business as usual. She talked shit about me to that family member. She said I was an awful person, this and that. But she wasn't even sad that I had completely cut off contact with her. And that it was obvious because I left and ran away from my own house. She just went to work, as always. Then probably, when she realized that it also meant that now I have a voice, now I'm gonna talk, that scared her. Probably still scares her.
Why is it so hard to it's so easy to convince someone else that they're being, it's so easy for me to convince someone else that they're being abused. But when it's my story, I always feel like, okay, I'm about to evict my parents. But they're not my parents, they're my abusers. That's what I need to remember. And I explain here, very lightly, little reminders of things they've done. There's more, but I'm gonna send it. So, let's go. 3, 2, 1. Done. I'm not super happy about this. I'm just gonna say, I'm not super happy because obviously I didn't want to get to this extent, but I really had no choice considering that she's already starting to make everyone think. So for the record, I just sent an email. I'm not having a mental breakdown. Okay? I look very normal, natural, myself. I know my name. I'm 30 years old. Not having a mental breakdown. Just doing my thing. Owning myself. And breaking the generational trauma.
And then afterwards, it was even wilder because after spending so long living in this environment where there was always stress, so much yelling, so much shouting, because even when I was living by myself, there were still phone calls. There was still that feeling of, I'm not living for me, I'm living for them. Ultimately, I need to get a good job and everything to help them. It's not for me. So, when I finally felt free, oh my gosh. So this is how people live. No yelling every day, no guilt tripping, no snarky comments, passive aggressiveness. I could not believe it. I couldn't believe it. I remember that the first meal I had with my partner and his mom, she was listening to what I was saying, actually listening and asking questions. And afterwards, I turned to my partner and I was like, is this always like this? It was really a moment of revelation for me. I don't need to be accustomed to the chaos to actually survive. That I actually, now to survive, I need to get used to silence and simple existence. It's just still really unbelievable for me.
Arriving here, to your room and stuff, I just felt there's actually a future ahead of me. Not kidding. I swear. I'm not kidding.
It was really hard to walk in that morning, in that house, look at my things, look at the wall. my bedroom that I painted, look at my art hanging on the walls finally that I had decorated so recently, and just look at everything that I had created for myself. A safe place, finally, I thought, before they decided to come back and invade my house and just take over my house. It was so hard to just realize that I am not going to have a place to call my own for a long time. I'm going to be living with a suitcase and with the rest of my belongings and anything that I own in a corner of a garage, and that's all I own and that's all I have. And I had worked very, very hard to have the things that I had, to build the things that I built. It was difficult to drive away and think that this was supposed to be my house, my place, and then I had to run away from it. I had to drive away and mourn that place and mourn the fact that I still won't be able to live a normal life for a while, you know? As much as it goes against what you think right now is your belief of what is right. Tried really hard to make sense of what had happened to me. And I will forever be grateful to the person that helped me through all this, to my partner. You know, for helping me leave. It was tough, and it's been tough. The thing about YouTube and why it's also been so therapeutic for me is because it connects us with other people and makes us realize that we're not alone. A lot of people are going through things, and a lot of people are searching to connect, and there is a solution out there and a way out. I'd like to believe that there is for YouTube, because I thought there wasn't for me. And the timing wasn't great, you know, for me to leave, but it had to be done. She had already hurt a lot of my previous pets and a lot of the animals that I had rescued previously. She was very cruel. Pets, she liked scaring them, threatening them, and yeah, basically exerting control. And I wasn't gonna let that happen to the two pets that have always been there for me.
In the back of my head, this voice had done what I should be doing. I should care, like, and I'm so grateful, blah blah blah. But I'm trying to fight that voice by thinking about all the bad stuff she's done with no regret, because that's the worst. People do mistakes. People make mistakes all the time. Even parents, because we're not perfect. The thing is, if you as a parent make a mistake and you know how to sit down with your child even years later and be like, I know that I made mistakes, but I want to make our relationship better. But if you're arrogant about it and you say that the kid deserved it, it's just manipulation, you know? If I want to move on, like, I need clear head, and it's impossible to have a clear head with her around. It's impossible. Like, even with her around, like, just on my phone ringing, like, it's too much. I can't even be happy when she's unhappy, because her unhappiness has to reign over my happiness, and that's not right. She's not genuinely happy for my happiness, because many times when I would say, you know, I was like really excited, and I would talk and I would pace around, she'd be like, why are you talking so much? Why are you pacing around? I'm in a bad mood. What are you doing? Which I don't understand, because for me, if I'm having a bad day and someone that I like is having a good day and something good happened in their life, I become happy instantly, because I'm like, I just feel that vibe. I don't know why not everyone is like that. I just want everybody to get along. That's a Mean Girls line.
It's so liberating. I don't have a family. There is no one I want to celebrate on Mother's Day or Father's Day or whatever. Will not inherit anything, but I like to believe that I will create my own family one day. I will find my people to celebrate the dates we want to celebrate. And it will be safe. And it will be peaceful. And it will be unconditional. I am freer than I was. But I am not as free as I want to be. Yet. I have moments of hopelessness, I'm not gonna lie. But I'm hopeful that things will turn around, you know? Then things have to turn around. I'm not gonna conform. You know, the conforming days are over. You know? This couldn't be a video of mine if I didn't show you my pets. So I'm gonna do that. Some snacks for them. So these are my babies. Cubas, sit. Paw. Paw. Yeah. Okay. There you go. Hey you. Sit. Paw. Cubas. Paw. I just want to say, if you watch this and this has been somewhat inspiring and helpful to you, just know that you're not alone. You can interact in the comment section. Feel free to do so. There are plenty of other support communities, online especially. You are not alone. You might be physically alone in the place where you're living right now, as I was, for example. So just remember that. Choose yourself, because I know it's really hard to do. I have this infinite love for anyone who has gone through abusive situations. Take care of yourselves, and thank you for watching and for being here. You're also helping me a lot and giving me a lot of hope to think that it was all worth it.